Divine Source, Great Spirit, we come this day with open hearts and open minds, asking that you fill us with your grace, your light, to speak to our minds and hearts of truth, and to allow us to be in service to our fellows by speaking for the sacred. We're grateful to be here. Thank you for calling us, and so it is.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. My name is Yuta, and I'm back with my lovely friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome back. We have been in a vibe of, as always, just being in a state of openness to seeing what the Spirit has in store for us in terms of these recordings. And oftentimes, as you may know, if you've been listening here or there, we do use oracle cards and tarot cards just to get a little more of a handle on the topics. And this morning, just in prayer around what the Spirit might want for us today, I had pulled some cards, and immediately the feeling that I got was to talk about this idea that in order for us to expand spiritually and on this awakening journey, we inevitably have to go through discomfort and have to come out of our comfort zones. And we often talk about this topic, obviously, but there's always more, I think, that we can expand on in terms of this idea. And yeah, along sort of with this idea of having to go through discomfort on this journey, I sort of got this picture of, it's not really about seeking for things that make us come out of our comfort zone, like, thrill seeking and going bungee jumping or jumping through fire or something like that. The way I see it, it's oftentimes very subtle process, and the discomforts that we're often facing are very subtle things in our mind. And yeah, in order kind of to go along this journey in a way that is most helpful for ourselves and most helpful for the whole, really, we have to be very intuitive with what we're being asked to do in any given moment by the Spirit. And oftentimes it isn't really what we expected or thought would be helpful. But with the willingness and curiosity and this open mindedness, we end up seeing that everything that's needed is always right there with us and it's always provided. And so, yeah, as always, we're just here to let the Spirit guide this conversation and see in which direction he wants to take this in terms of the general topic. So I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth and see what comes to mind for her.
So, as you were speaking, I was seeing images from The Princess and the Pea. That was a book that was somewhere in my childhood. And I was also recalling years and years ago when I first started to play around with energy work and was interested in the idea of this energy that I sensed moving through my hands. I started to look at osteopathic work, the original kind of osteopathic work that was more what our doctors were like. But often there were trainings in that field where people would learn how to sense very subtle energies. And I don't know if it was like Hahnemann, I think he might have been an osteopath. He would train himself, or somebody else would train themselves to take reams of paper and try to sense what object was in the papers. Now, maybe you could just say it's the mind that was doing it, but that idea of layers and layers and layers of stuff, and you said something about that often the invitation is more subtle than jumping off a bridge to face your fears, or, going spelunking to face your worries about the darkness or spiders or whatever it's going to be. So I was seeing those kinds of symbols that we can look at relative to our mind stuff. It's a deep, deep dive, and seemingly depending upon your own psyche and your own spiritual calling, the way it specifically is for you, it can take any form or shape, the seeming symbols and required actions for, what's going to be helpful for you. And as we've talked about many times, that's going to be given by the Spirit. The Spirit knows what we each seem to individually need for our healing and awakening, and that our piece of the puzzle is a vital piece for the healing of the one mind. And so, I've just found that at times it feels like there's a peeling of the layers of the onion. And then there are other times where it feels like massive chunks of the onion get ripped off. And the how or the why or the what of any of it, I don't really know. It's not really my business. But Spirit is always working optimally for us. For me, in this seeming lifetime, most of my inner work seems to have been largely about my own resistance and fear to answering my call and to being in service. There seem to have been many lifetimes of energetics that looked like persecution or the loss of life because of a spiritual path or because of a perspective of speaking for truth, speaking for the divine. So for me, a lot of my challenges and the layers and the subtleties that I've had to find my way in and through with Spirit have really come down to what we're all here for, which is the answering of the call. And so in a way, that's everybody's challenge to face, but those have been more of the seeming messages and symbols and dreamscapes that I've had to wind my way through. And they're not good or bad, and they're not better than anybody else's. They're just the stuff I seem to have been working out this lifetime. So, this facing the darkness, I've had a lot of images showing up the last couple of days. We didn't know this topic was going to be here until this morning. But I was seeing parts of my journey and a few moments where I was seemingly working with others that were helping me. And there was one image that was just showing up a couple days ago and showed up again this morning after I got an email from Utah. And it looked like a lifetime where I was a so-called indigenous person. It was a very ancient seeming storyline. And it doesn't have to be my story, but it's in the mind. And I was having it revealed to me while I was working with somebody who was facilitating me. And it was a story of seemingly having a vision of something not great that was going to happen. I seem to have received a vision of my village was going to be burned down, and I went to my elders and said, "Hey, there's something happening." And basically it was like, "No, it's not. You don't know what you're talking about." And I was dismissed. And later in the vision, I saw my village being burned down, just as I had seen and been shown. And the only point of telling that story is that in having that so-called record or story brought up into my conscious awareness, there was a massive release of energy. So much so, Yuta talked in a talk a couple talks ago about when she had like an initiatory experience with somebody. She had all this hot, fiery energy coming through her. Well, when I had this record come up and release for healing, the whole room was like, it felt like it was 100 degrees in there. And the person that was facilitating me had the same experience, like, wow, what just happened? So this idea of the amount of energy that goes into denying what is in the mind that wants to be addressed, it's vast. It is huge at times. And so if we want to be in our divine alignment and be moved by the divine, we talk about all the time, these things have to be cleared out. I've had a storyline throughout this whole life of people seemingly not listening to guidance that I deliver for them. Now, I've been trying to work that one out and get rid of that one for a long time. And even this storyline, this was seemingly 15, 20 years ago that I released that record. And I still continue to play out with people a story where people seem to not be willing or able to receive messages coming to them. So that's like a layer of my mind that I've been working with really my whole life. And it's not a good story or bad story. It's just one that I've been facing over and over again. And so part of the message that I don't know if you just said it or if we had just talked about it before getting on this talk is, we don't really know what healing is necessary. We can get little hints of it and we can get little bits of the picture, but we kind of really don't know what's what until we're going into it with a spirit. And part of what's showing up in my mind to say right now about this whole thing is, and then when it is revealed, then we let go of it until it becomes useful to somebody else. Like I haven't been sitting around like telling myself the story about this specific story of healing that I've had, but it's showing up now because it's going to be helpful to somebody. We don't want to get caught in the story of our healing journey is part of the message that wants to be said specifically in this. So there are all these layers of mind that we need to navigate in and out of, and we need to unstuck the energy. We need to get it up and out and release it so that we can be fully in that channel with the spirit. That story that I faced, that I've referred to, was a story of massive devastation in my heart and a massive desire to deny the gifts that I have because it was so devastating to have that gift and not have it received by others. So, I couldn't be fully in my function of delivering messages to people because I had heartbreak around it. And so that's like an important piece, right? Of like, well, why? Again, why talk about this story with others in this way on my end? Because that story was a massive block. A massive, massive block that was keeping me from fulfilling my slice of the Great Awakening properly for the divine. So, what do you have to say, Yuta?
Well, I really like the sort of direction of thinking when we're looking at going through discomfort that you said, the discomfort that we have to face seems to always be about going towards our function and really stepping more and more into what we're really meant to be doing here. Yeah, because this whole life, right? The only reason we even seem to find ourselves here is so that we can remember and retrieve who we really are. So there's no other purpose to being here except to come back to ourselves. So everything that we're doing here, and obviously it's totally unconscious in the beginning for most of us when we arrive here, but everything that we do, everything that seems to happen to us, its only purpose is to bring us closer to the truth of who we really are. So all of those discomforts are like these doorways to getting closer to that which we are. So, when that's something in awareness, it can help kind of drive us forward because obviously nobody really wants to go through any of this stuff. Those stories you shared, that those consciously are not things anybody wants to be going through. If you had had a choice, probably not something you would have chosen. But it's all these catalysts to bring into awareness really more and more every little step of the way closer to who we really are. So, yeah, and like you said, we oftentimes don't really know what we need. I think most of the time, never really actually we know what we need. So it's really the only thing that we can really do is go into prayer and listen to the spirit. It's like every time we do one of these recordings, we always come come back to that conclusion. It's like, okay, go to prayer. Spirit will tell you, and with an open mind, it'll get clear what needs to be happening. And yeah, just this morning, I was just connecting with a friend of mine, and she's it seems like she's going through this like big sort of initiation right now to really help her see that she's got this massive light in her and this really, really deep strength and also a strong foundation in terms of what she's gone through on her spiritual journey, and that there's a gift for her to share. But she's been going through this initiation, and pretty often it seems like she finds herself in this panic, like she must be doing the wrong thing because she's not feeling good. And, there's loneliness coming up and all of this stuff. And I didn't have a lot of time this morning to join with her, but she later, not even that much later, came back to me and she said, "Oh my God, I just, gave a session." She's a voice liberation sort of facilitator, and she gave a session to somebody. And that was the thing that was the most uncomfortable actually in the moment for her because she wanted to just go and run away and hide because she wasn't feeling good. But going in this direction of really sticking to her commitment to give this session actually completely pulled her out of whatever doubts she was having, the fears that she was having. And, it's like this reminder of when we step through these discomforts, and usually it has something to do with giving to others and extending the light and also speaking the truth and speaking what we probably need to learn the most in the moment. That's what really pulls us out. And something else I said before we got on the call was is that like in those kind of moments of discomfort, we're so focused on ourselves. Like we're complete center of attention, and when something is just not doesn't seem to be working out in the moment, there's so much focus on yourself. And most of the time in the moment, we probably forget that the way out of that is to focus on somebody else and focus on service. It seems like such a simple solution and it always works. And it was the same with me last time we did a recording, I just wasn't feeling like myself. And I was pretty close to canceling the recording, but I stayed open and willing. And since we did the last recording, my mind's just been really clear and so much energy. And it's like you're sitting there in the discomfort, and there's so much like uncertainty and doubt and darkness. And the last thing you want to do is actually hit a record button or, sit yourself in front of somebody that's coming to you for help. But those are those moments. And Elizabeth, you love to talk about grace. Those are these
Mm.
moments of grace where the spirit comes in because you're there and you're available and you're willing. The spirit just comes in like a floodgates are open, right? And it erases the problem you thought that was there. So, I can pretty much with 100% certainty say if we hadn't done that recording, it would have taken me much longer to come back to myself, with the spirit, because I just felt really stuck. And so I'm grateful for all of those moments where my mind can be open to the solutions that make absolutely no sense to my logical brain. Yeah, and those are these moments of discomfort that when we walk through them with the spirit and you have this open mind, they end up becoming also amazing opportunities to, share a gift with somebody else down the road. That's the only reason we ever talk about any of our own stories, because maybe it's somebody out there needs to hear these experiences that Elizabeth and I have had, because usually it turns out that the solution is so simple. And obviously our small mind wants to make things so complicated, and all of this work needs to be done. And yeah, we do have to do inner work, but sometimes there are these moments where it's as simple as getting out of the way and being in service. And, these are these kind of intuitive moments where we really have to let go of our own ideas of what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, just step out of the way and really let the spirit come in and lead. So yeah, that's kind of what was popping through for me here.
Yeah, as you've been talking, I keep seeing the Princess and the Pea. I don't remember the whole story, but I know that, she's got a little some agitator sort of element under her mattress. And her solution to it is to keep putting more mattresses on top. But the pea or the grain of sand or the whatever, right? She's sensing it as more and more layers of mattresses are being added. And, the mind and the personality, with all due respect, it's like a little petulant child that thinks that everything is supposed to be there to make it comfortable. And, it's such a great story, right? Because it so much reflects this journey, which is there are these teeny tiny little things in the mind. Sometimes they're bigger, but often they're just really tiny things that keep us from our peace of mind, that keep us from being focused on what's really important, which is the divine. Instead, we get fixated on the body and thinking that our experience here is about making ourselves bigger, better, and also making ourselves happy. The whole seek pleasure, avoid pain kind of paradigm is this world. And so, it's just such a great story. And I was seeing years ago, I saw some Buddhist monk on YouTube, and it was just a little clip, and he was saying, yeah, well, we roll out our mat every night to sleep on it. And it's a thin little cloth, and we use that so that while we're so-called sleeping, we are in discomfort. And in the morning, we roll our mat up and we use it, as our backpack for all of our, begging bowl and our gong and whatever we're traveling with as we go to collect alms for the day out in the world. That kind of austerity of that kind of a spiritual path is for the purpose of don't get too comfy because it's really easy to go to sleep when you're comfortable. People think, oh, get the big house, the better mattress, the shinier jewelry, whatever, that's going to make them happy. It's very seductive here. It's very, very, very seductive. It's easy to fall asleep. So this idea of trying to embrace the discomfort as this monk was being guided to do for his spiritual path, it's really beautiful and really helpful. And it will bring stuff up into the mind rather than trying to cover it over with a better mattress. These symbols are really powerful and useful for us to use to take a look at how we're operating and to look at what's in our minds. So, yeah, if we strip the mattresses down and just lay on the hard floor, it's going to give us an entryway into the mind. And as you said, that's where the grace can then come in, right? When we strip ourselves down to the cold, hard truths, then the light has a place to land. And of course, I have seeming worldly comforts at times. And of course, I've craved them and pursued them and all that kind of stuff. But really, the most beneficial parts of my journey have been when I'm in the crapper. And as you said, the most beneficial ways through those times have come by being in service to my fellows. The little petulant child thinks I need more blankies, more mattresses, better lighting, cup of hot cocoa. No offense, right? It's just what's going on. And if we coddle that part of ourselves that is the petulant child, it's not going to go well for awakening. And so we have to be guided by this force in our minds that knows we have these little personality characteristics and that is going to invite us out of it. Your friend that you referenced, she wanted to be in the personality, but grace came in, got her on the call, and delivered the grace through her and lit her up. That's why we do these calls. We want that grace flowing through us. It's a very selfish endeavor. It's a paradox. We seem to be a vehicle for grace, but while we're being a vehicle for grace, we're having it land in our own minds. So it's such a beautiful, as you like to say, it's like a really practical journey, really practically laid out for us, but we do have to choose it. I said to Yuta before the call, really the only times I've ever suffered, really, are when I'm not in service to others. That's it. So, yeah, it's a great topic. Really juicy. Glad you brought it through. So, what about you? Anything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole reason to even talk about this is, I keep looking at the cards that I pulled. And the first one that came out is this great card of this woman, and there's just electricity flowing through her, and she's free, basically. And the card actually is called electricity, but it also has a little subtext of wildness. And I just feel like, our minds want to be free in the truest sense, and they want to have the spirit run through them because that is the only way that we're going to be happy ever. Like you said, like we could try to get more stuff, get more titles, blah 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 blah, all of this stuff in the world, but if we're empty of the spirit, there's not going to be anything of worth in anything. So, going through these discomfort moments and, expanding through them is all to make room for more spirit in us and to bring more light through. And in order for us to be really in the channel with the spirit, which is our function here, which is our only purpose here, we do have to let go of these old stories and all of these burdens and that petulance. Yeah, that petulance that I know what I need, and I know what my problems are. And most of the time when we're in that space, like a toddler, it's like there's no solution to any of the problems. There's such a focus on, I don't have my lollipop, or where's my piece of chocolate, where's my blankie, where's my binky. And we have to just sometimes really stand up for our minds and say, no, there is an answer available right now. It means, though, that this story needs to die. And so, yeah, all of these burdens that we keep carrying around in our minds, all of these old stories do need to die. And that's what happens in those moments of going through the discomfort and into, these moments where we actually need to extend and be of service and come out of ourselves. And the end result is freedom of the mind. And that's what we really want. And yeah, that's why I enjoy doing these talks as well, because that's what always happens. I hear what I need to hear. You say things that are helpful to me, and somewhere along the way, it all seems to be helpful too, even if it's just one person that listens to this. So, very grateful for these opportunities.
Yeah, one of the cards that I had come forth was called the Chariot, and it's a woman who's got the black horse and the white horse. And, we're often talking about as if we're not already what we are in truth, right? But there does seem to be this requirement to temper, the dark and the light, to alchemize them so that they are in balance, that perfect place of equanimity. And so the black and the white, the dark and the light, just as concepts of our mind, bringing the darkness into a place where the light can simply direct it for the highest good. We are already that. We already in truth are perfect and whole and complete. And we only get to ride the wildness of you, as you spoke of, ride this chariot swiftly home when those two horses are cooperating with each other, the so-called lower mind and the higher mind, if you like to think of it that way. They have to come into harmony in order for us to be in that chute with the spirit. And when we get those two forces working, even though it's pure, wild, electrical, dynamic, massive energy, we can sit on the chariot and not fall off. That's fantastic. I love the wildness. We all do. Because we know it is that unbridled, unencumbered light that we are, that can do anything. But when we have competing forces in our minds, then we get stuck in our littleness and our limitedness. So I love that you brought in the wildness, because it is what makes our heart sing. But as you said, often people are going to look at getting it by jumping off a bridge or having sex, in an alley with a stranger. There are a lot of ways that people try to light that fire or feel that kind of an impulse within. But that impulse is just us when we are really letting spirit move through us. And it's so much fun. That's why I love connecting with you, because I know that fun and that joy of the spirit is alive in you, and that you let it direct you. And so you and I can have fun together. It took me a long time to find people to have fun with. So the gift of facing the discomfort brings me into what I've really been looking for all the time, that really is real and true about me and everyone else. So that's it from here.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's it for me too. It's a lovely topic and yeah, feels complete on my end. So
Yep.
yeah, thanks to anybody who came along this journey on the chariot. and
Yeah.
yeah, looking forward to having you back next time. So thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you to whoever's listening.
Yeah. Bye for now.
Bye for now.